Hi, everyone. Welcome to the 10th episode of Change with Colton. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Deepika Phakke. She has an impressive journey from the corporate tech world to impactful social entrepreneurship. She's had four promotions in her time at Google to become a senior manager of Google Ads. She started a nonprofit called Street Store, which was a pop up providing donated clothes to the homeless. And now she's the founder of Nama Water, creating a more sustainable world every day. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Colton. Thank you for the generous introduction.
Problem. To get started, I'd love for you to share your story about when you were 8 years old and how that has brought you to where you are today.
Absolutely. So I grew up in Hyderabad, a city of 10 million people in South India. Even though it is a large city, back then when I was growing up, we didn't have the luxury of having running water in our homes, as most American homes do. So what used to happen is there would be a tanker that would bring water to our neighborhood. And my family and I would go to the tanker and carry back water in buckets back to our home. Even though I was 8 years old and didn't have to carry the heaviest of loads, that experience really left a mark on me, having to experience water scarcity. And early on in life, I learned to treat water with respect, which is when I joke around with my friends. I think even to this day, I remember being so amazed when I first moved to America, seeing tap water being drinkable and there's like 24/7 supply. These are some things that you don't often see even back home today, and not because of people being poor or anything of that sort. It's just water infrastructure being the way it is. And it's not just India. Like there are so many countries, so many parts of the world, like whether it's the Middle East, Africa, Belgium, Spain, Greece, Chile, everywhere else, like countries are increasingly under water stress. And there is an increasing need for us, people like you and me, to do better with how we see and treat water, particularly when it comes to everyday products like bottled water. So, yeah, combining my love for having to live these values and bringing more sense and consciousness into how we see water, and then need to cut down on plastics in our everyday life, Nama Water was born. Nama in Sanskrit language means respect, and we've been around for about 2 years now.
Awesome. Very inspiring. And yeah, I definitely agree. Like in the US, a lot of people don't even know that there's water scarcity in other countries. And I appreciate what you're doing and sharing that mission. It's very impactful. And in that time, I'm sure you overcame a lot of adversity.
Yes, and it wasn't easy, and I feel very privileged to be in this space where you and I have the opportunity to talk and educate and create awareness, because our living reality is very different from what others experience on the other side of the world, and even like several different parts.
So to jump from that 8-year-old Deepika to that 19-year-old self, I saw there was a impactful experience there. Can you share that and like what you did to overcome that self-doubt?
Yes, and good research. I appreciate it because it was one of those defining moments. And for context, this is the time when I was still in university. In India, we graduate early at 19. You're about to wrap up your undergraduate degree. And growing up, I was a very nerdy kid. I loved studying, and I was just curious. And it just kept me going to learn and do well in academics. That was my thing. And having been used to that kind of life for years and years, whether it was at school or university. I was accustomed to getting good grades in some ways, with all due respect to modesty, was getting all of these gold awards, and that kept me going. And all the teachers loved me. And that was a great life until I was about to transition to the real world. We had companies like Goldman Sachs, Meta, Google coming to our campus and interviewing us as college students. So it was like an exciting time. We were ready to get into the real world, applying all of the academic knowledge, or so you think. And when that happened, I started to appear for all of these interviews. And I think I did like 30 plus companies, and each of them had like several rounds of group discussion, written exam, and then HR rounds. I did go through a lot of them, but to my surprise, all of them rejected me. I think at least a solid 32 companies rejected. And this was a huge blow to what I was expecting. Let's say I was like, where did I fall short? I have been such a diligent student, and that's this testament of all the grades that I earned in some sense. And turned out life wasn't going my way. And it was the first time as a young adult I experienced rejection. And even though it was super tough for me on my mental health at the time, and I started to doubt what was all this about all of these years. I started to have feelings of imposter syndrome where I'm like, am I really not good? Was this just like a certain part which is not going to be relevant to the rest of my life? And I had all of these thoughts. But one thing that worked in my favor was I kept going. I kept telling myself there's going to be something for me. So I continued to appear for my last semester. And once was about to wrap up my college situation and then was continuing to interview. And one day I got a call saying, hey, we've shortlisted you. Would you like to join us? And because I was interviewing a lot, I was like, hey, what company are you from? Because I know we talked. So she's like, hey, I'm from Google. And I was like, yes. So that was that moment where, I realized that perseverance, because I kept going and did not give up, there was something in store. And Google actually notorious for a process like this. They interviewed me in November of 2010 and then placed an offer like April or May when all campus placements were done and all like everything was wrapped up and finally they gave an offer. It was quite an experience. I took it to heart way more than I should have. But Gordon, like all in all, if I have to sum up, it was definitely a defining moment with rejection because face to face with what real life has in store for you and getting ready for that, the sooner you learn it, the better it's going to be for you. And yeah, that was definitely one of those moments for me.
Very inspiring. Yeah. I mean, I think that correlates to any part in life. Like if people are in their job search right now, or they're a
Yeah.
founder trying to get customers or raise money, there's a lot of rejection to overcome. And your journey was very inspiring for that. So thanks for sharing.
Yeah, and in fact, to your point, I agree. It's not just an isolated experience from, let's say, a university standpoint. So many lessons are still applicable to entrepreneurship. As you mentioned, like even today, if I have to look at like the last 2 years of being a founder, the three lessons that, a lot of that we cover in that instance in my university time, I would say number one is like if you're onto something worthwhile, rejection is going to be there. It's something you just have to go through, accept, and keep moving. And number two is success has no ETA or timeline. It's not guaranteed. And it's again another thing that you have to accept. And lastly, like the third number, which is my favorite, is like perseverance. As an entrepreneur, you have to keep going. As long as you continue making the effort, you're gonna see results. It may not be in your timeline, but it's going to be leading you to the right direction. So these are like some lessons that I continue to remind myself even to this day as a founder.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah. Right now, I'm on my own journey in that. Like I'm trying to build a startup. I'm also
Yes,
trying to join a startup full time, but there's definitely feelings of that self doubt, and you have to make sure you keep going and pushing through.
absolutely.
So before we jump into talking more about Mama Water, can you tell us more about what Street Store was and like what
Yeah.
led you to doing that?
Yes, absolutely. So Street Store was a passion project. It was an idea actually started in by somebody now I know, and I got to work with her. She started Street Store in Africa and then pioneered it in various parts of the world. Volunteers such as myself took it up in San Francisco. But really, it's an idea where we create a pop up store instead of handing out donations to the homeless people without giving them a choice and just giving them because you have these donations in hand. It's a more dignified way of creating a pop-up, and it's like a setup where the homeless community can come and shop and take it for free and giving them the power of choice. And that idea actually came about when I moved to San Francisco in 2015. And I noticed that there is so much wealth, so much abundance around us, but there are also these people who are not having the same experience of life as you and I are. And it really was unsettling. So I started to volunteer with Glide and some of the NGOs that were doing incredible work. I was a meal server for one of them. And then quickly noticed there is more that needs to be done. And this one time when I learned about the street store, I really felt like that was something I wanted to pursue, but didn't know when. And one time when I was on my way to work and our bus broke down, and I was just waiting there trying to like book an Uber very frantically, getting late. I saw this homeless man kind of looking hungry. So I asked him, hey, would you like to have something from a nearby Starbucks? And he just ended up in tears. And I was like, okay, this is really sweet. And we had a moment, but he was like, in a very long time, no one has asked me what I really wanted. They would just offer me, but nobody ever asked me. So that was like a very powerful and humbling moment for me to realize that there is so much power in choice and just being conscious about the way we do what we do. And that led me to actually taking action. And Street Store resonated with the idea of giving people back choice, giving aid with dignity. So we did a pop-up store in October of about like 2016, 17. And yeah, ever since been volunteering and promoting the same message of respect and compassion through the culture that we create with and outside of Nama Water.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I have a deep passion for helping others as well. And in the past, like I've cooked meals for the homeless in downtown Chicago, and I really love giving back. So I appreciate what you did there. I know it's very inspiring as well.
Yeah, and
Um,
thank you for doing your part. It's absolutely important. I feel like each one of us are here to help each other because why not, right?
yeah, definitely. And even with like my startup, I am exploring a few ideas to like help the hungry as well.
Mm.
But yeah, definitely very cool. To
Thank you.
transition a little bit to your career at Google, you ran some zero waste events. Can you expand on that and what your experience was?
Yes, absolutely. So with my time at Google, I was there for about 10, 11 years, and that's a very long time to be in a company. I was incredibly privileged to be able to move from India, starting in Google Hyderabad office, to making my way to San Francisco, and then moving to New York for 3 years, and then moving back to SF all through my 11 years, also navigated working on various different products within Google. And that meant that I moved around a lot. What that helped is gave me the opportunity to work with different teams, not just restricted to what I would do as a full-time role of mine within Google Ads. So I was also working with DEI teams. I was working with sustainability teams to see if there is a more like a dialogue of culture that rather a dialogue that we could establish as a company around what can we do while we're still holding on to our jobs? How can we make our lives more sustainable? How can we make Google more sustainable? So that is what I loved. Those are some of the things I loved about Google. There was so much opportunity and there were always people willing to join forces. So as a result, I got together with a lot of sustainable and to do zero waste events like calling Lauren Singer, the superstar from zero waste community, invited her to Google New York office, had her speak to us, give us everyday tips. While we may not be able to be a zero waster 100% like her, just putting the message out there that it's possible for you and I also to live a sustainable life. We don't have to commit to being the perfectionist certified zero waster. It's about whatever we can do wherever we are. So keeping that in mind, I did organize like about 5 to 10 events because some of these problems that we unlocked during our research was all our problems are interrelated, like climate change, plastic pollution, and everything that comes in between is all knit together. It's not one thing or the other. And the same goes for the solutions, especially when we think of, oh, all the plastic that's in the ocean. It's not about going and cleaning up and that's about it. It's about doing things on land. Sure, it is about those things as well, but it is also doing things on land so that we don't continue to push and create that problem in the first place. So it's not just the policy, it's not just the entrepreneurs or the activists or the consumers, it's all of us together because we need every different angle when it comes to a crisis as massive as climate change and how plastic pollution is just one part of it. So I feel like all those conversations really helped create this dialogue, create a mental picture in my head, learning from these incredible people, and then taking this back home and understanding where is it that I can add value. Sure, I can continue organizing these talks. Immensely grateful for Google for giving us that platform. But I always had this urge, or it left me with that urge that I must do more. And that those all roads led to Number Water.
Amazing stuff there. Can you share a few tips on how someone in today's world can be more sustainable?
Yes. First of all, just accepting that when we say sustainability, it doesn't have to be a perfect zero waste lifestyle. That is number one. Accepting and knowing that there is only so much you can influence and keeping that consciousness on that you want to do it. You may not be able to do it all the time when it comes to making sustainable swaps, but the fact that you are reminding yourself and continuing to opt and pushing yourself towards that choice is the right way to go. And that is the only way to go. Aspiring for a very solid, perfect lifestyle is a good thing, but starting off imperfectly is a very happy place for me and it's worked out very well. So tactically speaking, how can we be a little more sustainable? I think just looking at your personal choices, for me, it was things that didn't add up, which were very unsettling. So I was doing all of these talks at Google promoting, let's say, a low waste lifestyle. But when I was traveling to Chile, to all the national parks here in the United States, I realized that I was constantly reaching for bottled water, which was plastic. So that was very unsettling for me. So examining my own choices and seeing if does it really align with my values. Sure, I wasn't trying to be 100% perfect. There were times when plastic water bottle was the only option, but I started to increase my usage of my reusable bottle, for example, started to carry it as much as I could. Sure, it's not possible every time, but wherever I could. So seeing for yourself, like doing that assessment, what are some of these places where you are reaching for plastic in your daily life? And what are some of the alternatives that you can explore, if not 100% of the time, at least as many times as you can. And making that start actually led me to do Nama Water. It could be different for you depending on your lifestyle and where you're at in your life.
I think there's many things people can do in everyday life more sustainable, and just switching a few things can really make an impact.
I would also would love to hear from you as well, because I know you are very passionate about sustainability. The fact that we're having this conversation, you've been so supportive of all CPG sustainable entrepreneurs as well. So if you have any tips that I can learn from.
Reflecting back on my previous experience in my time at Purdue, I had the opportunity to be a Net Impact Club president, and that focused on sustainability and social causes. I do have to make some more changes in my daily life. I feel like I am aligning with what you're saying and those values to change to reusable water bottles, but just like recycling in general,
Hmm.
I think can make a tremendous impact.
Absolutely. I think that you bring up a very good point, because I was talking to a recycler just a few days back, and they mentioned, especially for aluminum, one of the biggest hurdles is consumers not recycling, meaning aluminum not reaching the right bin. It's not that there's any problem with the material. It's about us not having the infrastructure for collection when it comes to such a versatile material as aluminum. So yes, 100% to your point, we can all do more, a little more on the recycling front as well.
Do you think that involves politicians, or how would it be easier for consumers to recycle?
I can speak particularly of aluminum. Let's say, just from a consumer standpoint, every time you're using like a aluminum can, whether it's a soda beverage or any kind of aluminum, as long as you are putting it in the recycling bin, it's going to be a much better step than casually letting somebody else take care of it. For example, like don't assume that it's going to go in the right bin. If you can put, you do your part in putting it in the blue bin. I think that's one of the biggest steps, because there are a couple of programs that I know, like the cow recycling, and there are curbside pickups. You could also drop off a collection of all your empty aluminum cans to a recycler. But I understand those are heavy effort actions. And instead, if as a consumer, you're at a party, you see a pile of used aluminum cans, making sure that it's reaching the right one, at least from your side, is a really good first.
Yeah, I'll definitely get more involved with that part of the community. To jump into Nama Water a bit more, what ultimately led you to leave Google and start it?
Yeah, and it was definitely a journey. When people ask this, I love the question, but it's also like an answer which took me a while to get. It was several years in the making. I was always passionate about, as you can tell, like some of the events that I was doing at Google, there was always this thought of doing something more, something that resonated deeply with my values of whether it's treating water with respect or just wanting to lessen my impact on the planet and help others around us. Because what I learned is a lot of people like you and me, Colton, are not here to trash the planet. We're not actively
Right.
trying to create waste here. It's just that the way our lifestyle has evolved as humans, that plastic has found its way in ways that it's hard to get rid of now. And I increasingly learned that more people want to do this. It's just that as an entrepreneur, I started to think, how can we make it easy for them? How can we give them a more convenient solution? By no means we want to tell them that, hey, this is a perfect replacement for water, plastic water, please go buy this. We're not trying to say that. We're still, as a company, trying to message with our core values of drink safe water wherever you have access to it, meaning drink tap water if it's safe. Anywhere else you go out without packaging, if you can use your reusable bottle, that's the best way to go. But if that's not an option, reach for more sustainable alternatives. And with that mindset, I was looking at, as I discussed earlier, when I was traveling around the planet and even in the United States, continued to reach for plastic bottled water. And then back home, I was doing these talks to cut down on plastic and knowing that water is such a scarce resource. It's like just ingrained in me. I just realized there was a need to do it. So I started to research normal water as a side hustle, as a side project to understand what is this industry looking like? Why isn't everybody doing aluminum if it's that sustainable? And started to get into the details of where is water sourced from? Okay, here are the companies I like. Why aren't they doing something a little better than what they're already doing? And because I didn't get anywhere with those, I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. I have these ideas that there's got to be sustainable packaging, step one. Because when we look at the plastic crisis, it's a huge problem. About 1 million plastic bottles are sold every minute, which means we're coming up when we talk about alternatives against a huge, huge market. And just 4 or 5 companies doing it is not enough. And with Number Water, I had this idea about treating water with more respect, especially where we source water from today. So ethical sourcing was a big deal. We created a certain set of standards for Number Water, checking off the boxes about how do we make sure that communities around are treated properly? We're sourcing from a spring which is sustainable. It's one of the rainiest places in the United States and it's checking off certain boxes. So yeah, that led me to creating something that is something we would be proud of, as a consumer, if we were to consume this or find in the market. So yeah, that's how Number One came about. And our mission is to help people. Like I said, people are not trying to trash the planet. People are here for really being a part of the solution. So how do we make that happen? With Normal Water, our goal is to make it easy for everyone to enhance and enjoy the world. So whether it's swapping your smart water or Coco water with the normal water, whatever that step looks like, we're making it easy for you to live your values. So you don't have to quit your job or a podcast and still be sustainable.
Awesome. Can you dive a little deeper into that? Like, how did you find that spring to source from? Kind of like develop the brand and expand more on that.
Absolutely. And this was again a journey. Started off thinking, I do not come from this background. I had a decade of experience in tech. I knew how to build tech teams, what to do with advertising and everything around it. But it was a really good challenge in some sense that it kept me going because, okay, I'm in a new country somewhat. And how do we make this happen? All I knew is I wanted to make it happen because I couldn't stop using bottled water myself in most places that I was traveling to. So started off with a Google search. That's where everyone starts, and started to look as simple as like where to get water for bottled water, and looked up manufacturers, co-packers, and started to interview. Visited a few of them on site across the United States, and just talking to them, reaching out and learning some of their practices. Also, educating myself on what not to do was very helpful. Looking at documentaries like Troubled Water. Have you seen any of those? The one with Zac Efron and then another one on Netflix.
I need to watch some more of them.
Highly recommended, and definitely a good learning experience on things that not only I don't want to do, but also like to take care and like also solve for some of those things. So sourcing of water was one of the things that came out of the educational content that I found in those documentaries. And just interviewing some of the co-packers and really found one that resonated with our values. Some of the things I love about where we source water from today is, as I mentioned, it's sourced from one of the rainiest places in the United States. Our bottles are manufactured right next to where the source is, so there's no transportation between where the spring is to where the bottles are manufactured, making it even more sustainable, cutting down our carbon footprint. And also, it's an FDA certified spring, and because it's the rainiest spring, it's got a very long life, and we take a very very small percentage of the water for our consumption for number water. Excuse me, number water. Maybe I need some water. But either way, as a company started to incorporate these practices and starting off with making sure that the people you're working with also align with your values and not settling until you find them was what Number Water, I think, tried to do early on since like day one.
Thank you. Do you have any tips for an entrepreneur that wants to get involved with the CPG space? Obviously, there was a lot of challenges when you were building the brand and where you are today. Can you share a few of those tips?
Yes. And there are lots. I will try to keep it short. Number one tip, just get started. You do not have to leave your job. You don't have to put in a ton of investment. It may seem like you do, meaning you need more time or more resources. But the fact that I was able to start it out as a side hustle, I feel like if I can do it, you can do it. You seem way smarter than me. If you have an idea, just go for it. It's all about just getting started with that first step. You don't need to have a full-fledged business plan, 5-year projections built out. All those worries are not for today, especially if you're getting started. So that's like my number one advice, to get started in some formats wherever you are. You do not need a lot of money. You do not need all the time in the world. You just need to get started. That would be, let's say, the number one thing. Number two, again, something that works for number water is asking for help. I think I reached out to a lot of people, Colton, more than you would imagine. Not a lot of people reached back out, but the ones that did were incredibly helpful, and I cannot thank them enough. Basically, having people who have been there, done that, who you think could help you, and if they have the bandwidth to help you, and if it works out, it's going to be really good. And it's also like a nice journey to have supporters, mentors that help you build and make your dreams come true in some sense.
Very inspiring. Yeah, I think having that community and support with mentors is a key driving factor to success. And that's also why I recently launched a community for founders to connect them with mentors to fast forward their
Awesome.
success.
Congratulations. Where can I find it? I can look up. I can use some more mentors and be a part of CPG community.
I'll link it in the show notes. It's called
Okay.
Founders Social Club. I would love to have you part of it.
Amazing.
Moving on to the last segment of the show. It's called Idea Factory. My audience is primarily founders, and I want to
Mhm.
provide them with some business ideas that they could create. Can you offer actionable business ideas to aspiring founders that they could explore?
For sure. I feel like after COVID, our life has changed a lot with the way, especially as consumers. When you think of it, the movement and the shift from, or let's say, people have started to talk more about over consumerism. There is like more consciousness in what are people consuming, where are they consuming, who are they consuming it from. There is that increasing awareness, which leaves us as new or potential founders an opportunity to do things better than what they are being done today. So even like the number one thing I would say is, even if there are things that you see out there in the world that are being done, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just have to do one step better. So find something that you really like and you care about, whether it's something in gaming industry, whether it's something in CPG industry. Maybe this is a sustainable toothpaste or toothbrush, whatever that looks like. If you care enough about the space, just start looking at aspects that you care about, as a consumer you're going to use. Start to build a community around it, similar to what you're doing, Colton. Like, start to really get people excited and having those initial conversations and early feedback to put something out there without investing too much money, and then getting feedback and then going and building out a MVP in the space, because you're passionate about it, and you're going to need a lot of passion as you continue building, because like I said, throughout the journey there's going to be a lot of rejection. It's the passion that's going to keep you going. So making sure you're passionate about the space that you're working in, and you don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel. You just have to do something better than what's being already done, and know that you're going to have to stick to this. So you better be making a very nice product that you're going to be proud of. So yeah, that would be my advice.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think pursuing your passions is definitely a key factor as well, because along with like that persistence, you're going to have those moments where it's harder to keep going. So, do you have any last minute thoughts, and how could the audience be useful to you?
Yes, I guess we have to keep building as entrepreneurs. If you have it in you, if you're not feeling this is it with where you're at in life, listen to that feeling. There's definitely some fire there. So don't let it die. Keep exploring, continue reaching out to people, because that's where everybody started. Everybody, like whether this is the most successful person you've met or you've not met, they were probably where you and I are today. So, Colton, like the only thing I love when I meet new or potential founders is the fact that they have an idea and they have that itch, and that itch is something that could probably translate to the next Apple or Google of the world. So gotta get started, and once you're started, like, keep the passion, and it is going to pay off someday.
Thank you. It was a pleasure having you on Change with Colton, episode 10. Remember to be grateful and stay blessed.
Thank you, Colton. Lovely chatting.